What's up, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies.
Hashtag fuck Instagram. Let's make that
there
start trending.
Number one, pick indies if you can, both producer brands as well as stores.
You know, he comes out of the interview and I'm like, oh my God, did you lose it? Like, are we?
It's like a Seinfeld adoption episode. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Legacies. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie. Joining me is co-host and executive producer, Mr. Wesley the Wizard Bowles. Wes, good morning. How you doing?
Morning.
How you doing today? Good. Today's a bit scattered. I've got the boys in the studio today.
The boys, the troublemakers.
The troublemakers, yeah. Gordy and Randall are in studio, so we'll do our best to make sure that their chatter is to a low. Dude, I need a fucking haircut. Like,
I got one. I got one about 2 days ago. I was in desperate need.
You're high and tight. That's what we like to call it. High and tight.
Yeah, I have. My hair grows super quick, and it's. I got to take it short, otherwise I've got to get my haircut every single week, right?
I keep noticing mine, and just like, yeah, as you know, I used to keep it very short, like yours.
Oh man, yeah. When I first met you, you were to the bone almost, with the exception of the top.
Yeah. I think my time in corporate life, I'm like, fuck it. After that, I'm like, I'm just letting it grow. And obviously, Lauren, my daughter, is a hairstylist, so she fits me in every once in a while. But I'm due. Maybe I'm just going to take it off. Got to get rid of it. What's going on this week?
Well, summer's coming up too, right? So
Summer's
it's nice to have. It's a little cooler and stuff, especially. But
I don't know. We'll see. I don't wear without a hat very often, so maybe.
Yeah. This week's looking pretty good. I mean, we've. I think first thing we should touch on, obviously, is two new brand partners on the highflyer.ca. So we are welcoming the Lake of the Woods Bud Company, so Lot W, and our very own BCC, Victoria Cannabis Company, are now available. Yep. And live on the Highflyer. So super excited to have them as brand partners on there.
There's a lot coming in. It's exciting because obviously the work that we've done is, as much as swag is cool, we love being able to get the swag out there. There's a lot of individuals that love to support their favorite brands. But for brands, this is about increasing your digital presence. Like our site, the Highflyer, is an SEO juggernaut as far as I'm concerned. So we're seeing great traffic to that site. Brands, if you're looking for opportunities to continue marketing, swag is a necessary evil to you. We get it. But this is a great opportunity for brands and they're all coming in now. So that's good. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever make 1,000, but there is 1,000 there available. We're at what, 16, 15, 16, something like that.
16 or 17 now. Yeah. And a couple in the pipeline, which is exciting too, but we'll keep that under wraps for now.
Yeah, exactly. As they become available, we'll make sure that they're out there. So thanks to VCC, Victoria Cannabis Company, and Lake of the Woods Bud Company. Julie and Josh over there, they've been fantastic to work with. So been a lot of fun. This week, we've got Lisa. I'm going to slaughter her last name because she's Italian. She's a good old Italian girl. I'm going to say Bigioni, okay? That's the way I'm going to say it. I would agree,
yeah.
Now, I think the masses, they probably just glaze over it and say Bigioni, right? We'll get her to clarify, but obviously Lisa joining us from Stok'd today. We're going to talk about, man, she's been in the industry a long time, and she was an early lottery winner for Ontario to be able to get her retail licenses. So we're going to speak with her. They had as far as I'm concerned, wicked campaign that Health Canada didn't necessarily agree with. So we're going to get the deets on that. A lot of chatter surrounding this data deal bullshit going on.
That's the big one this week, isn't it? The first big real wrist slap for these, potentially inducing deals related to retail sales, right? That's crazy stuff. Exactly.
And a fine handed out. Obviously, they will probably challenge that. We'll get into those details. We're going to bring Owen Allerton in. We were speaking with him yesterday, and great sport. Last minute, it's like, hey, can you connect on this? Owen has been an advocate. And really just the flag bearer, I think, when it comes to this. So he's got a lot of great insight. We're going to have him jump in here very shortly, within the next few minutes, actually, and just give us, we'll butcher this, right? We understand it enough to be dangerous, but these individuals that are running retail, they're living this day in, day out. Competition Bureau has been called out multiple times. My good old buddy, Shane Morris, he is an individual that is not silent on it. He calls them dodgy data deals, but if you catch him on the right day, he calls them fucking dodgy data deals. So we'll see what Owen has to say about this and break it down. It's an interesting subject because obviously brands want distribution, and retailers want to carry brands, but should there be money paid to gain that shelf space is the question. It obviously puts a lot of the indos or the independents farther behind because they don't have the monies to be able to do such, and they don't necessarily have the data. So
it should be interesting. Should be interesting to hear from Owen because again, I've heard two sides to the story, or two opinions from both sides. Right, one is, this shouldn't be allowed, especially that we're taxed already at 30% in the industry and things like that. But then you have the other side saying, well, everyone else, all other industries, retail industries, have those types of data deals, right? But I think the point of the whole thing is that it's in the regulations. We can't induce as part of that.
Specifically written within there, and at the provincial level, each province has their own take on it and what is allowed and not allowed. But federally, no. We'll talk with Owen about that. He'll enlighten us, I'm sure. Let's talk a second about our exodus. It's not a total exodus, but exodus from Fuckerberg's Meta. I love Fuckerberg. I'm going to use it forever now. I probably have. And I didn't realize it.
We had a quote from that on Instagram. I'm going to stick that on screen.
There's a quote from Instagram. Yeah. So, we've always gotten ourselves in trouble on Instagram when it comes to the High Flyer account. Obviously, we promote or work with to promote, not induce, promote brands just to help build awareness around a brand. And Instagram doesn't like that. And listen, at the end of the day, it's their playground, and they've openly invited individuals to come in and play. We're taking our toys and going home, but not home. It's a new home. And that is and I get this too, not a lot of individuals love Mr. Elon Musk. Personally, I think he's a pretty cool dude. He's done a lot of shit, obviously, to piss a lot of people off, but it's an unfiltered arena, right? So we're making a big push. You can speak to this a lot better because the world is social, but
yeah, I think it really just comes down to censorship, right? I understand that Meta and things like that and most of the other social giants are American-based companies where on a federal level, cannabis is still not legal. But I think it's important that these companies need to remember they operate in other countries where, especially here, this plant is legal and is federally regulated, and, content and community guidelines should be updated to at least, I'm not saying that you should be allowed to post, thousands of videos of you getting fucked up on dabs and stuff like that or whatever. But I'm saying brands should at least be able to attempt to market themselves without worry of being silenced, right? And I think that's just one place we align with on the, at least on the X front or the Twitter front, is that censorship is still, censorship is something that's being talked about there, and it's taken very seriously. And, that has its ups and downsides too, right? I mean, Twitter can be, with all that non-censorship, you also get a lot of, you get black market stuff on there as well. There's a lot of conversations about that, but you've got to take the good with the bad in most of those situations. And I think it's worth it from the aspect of freedom of speech and censorship to be able to be on there and not worry about your brand being silenced.
Yeah.
I guess it's brutal to me that on the Instagram side, I think what pisses me off the most is a lot of the times it will allow these brands to get to a certain point where they've spent time getting to 3, 4, 5,000 followers. And I realize people online have 20, 30, 50, 100,000 followers, and that's what's big. But in the cannabis industry, 4,000 or 5,000 followers is huge.
It's a lot of work.
How hard it gets there. And it's only when they get to that point sometimes that then Instagram goes, no, now you've done too much. Now we'll take you away.
But what's the deal here? Like, it seems like money talks, right? Because Weed Maps, Leafly, some of the bigger giants in the cannabis industry, they seem to be unaffected. Maybe there's shadow bans on their account. I don't know. But at the end of the day, they're still doing a lot of the same things that all these other companies are doing. And that's, I think, the part that really pisses people off the most is they don't understand without rhyme or reason, why was this allowed? You didn't pull this, but then you pulled this. And after all that work, all that effort, because in a lot of cases, some of these brands are doing incredible work, and there's not a lot of places that they can communicate that. So they're putting the time and the effort into their digital creatives. They're getting it out there. They have social media managers. They're doing their best. And then all of a sudden, they're just, no, you can't have an account. So, this is kind of our call out to say, we're not going to go silent on Instagram, but if you are a Canadian cannabis brand or any cannabis brand for that matter, you should be on X, Twitter, and operating within there. I get it. It's a bit of a jungle and it can be a negative place, but do yourself a favor, spin up an X account and be there. Elon Musk, you need to tell everyone that it is a safe space for cannabis brands to be in. Anyways, enough about that, because it just pisses me off.
It really does. It really does. It's awful. And yeah, like you said, it's not perfect, but we're gonna take a stab at making that our primary platform for a little bit. It's really nice too that we're able to post full episodes of Legacies on X now. It used to be very limited on the length of your videos. So in addition to YouTube, we're gonna have we're really diversifying all our content across multiple platforms, right? The way any cannabis brand should too. Because things may change with Twitter, things may change down the line for other things, right? And it's important that you keep your presence up across multiple. But it seems like the path we're going to take at the moment. So hashtag fuck Instagram. Let's make that start trending. But so
yeah, exactly. And I'm just noticing I'm all buttoned up like I'm going to church today.
Yeah, you're looking very, very proper.
Maybe I'll keep it. I usually do it just to get my collar back to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get Owen Allerton in. He's going to talk to us about data deals and the bullshit that's going on there. I'm going to get him to speak about the campaign that he had started, Cancel Kickbacks. I think that he initiated that, and really break down the understanding of what is IRCC and Canna Collective, their type of data packages, which don't seem offside, but also compare and contrast that to what's going on. So let's get Owen in. Hey friends, guess what? It's almost t-shirt season. Are you ready? You should be rocking your favorite brand. Head on over to thehighflyer.ca and check out all the licensed cannabis brand swag that we've got available. From Moto to Victoria Cannabis Company, Smoker Farms, Royal Harvest, the list goes on, and there's more coming on every single week. Check it out, add it to your cart, and be prepped. Sun's out, guns out. All right, welcome, Owen Allerton, Highland Cannabis. Thank you so much for joining us, Owen.
My pleasure. Good morning, gentlemen.
We're talking data deals, and rather than us butcher it and try and understand this world because you live this day in, day out, we thought, let's have someone very vocal and has been waving this flag for a long time. First, Owen, break down what a data deal is for us.
Oh, data deals. Fun topic. So technically, what they're talking about, if you're talking about a real data deal, would be retailers selling sales insights to producers. It's not scary stuff about selling customer information, or at least it shouldn't be. I mean, technically you could be violating a bunch of other laws.
Yeah, there's a lot of other ones there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the notion that retailers would be selling information and insights back to retailers. And why is that important? Why is that necessary? There is this sort of weird gap because producers sell into the OCS and then the OCS sells to retailers, and producers are sort of flying blind. They have no idea, where the stores are. Their only public info is really the AGCO list of licensed stores, and you don't know which of those stores have picked up your products or selling them, how well they're doing. So there is a legitimate need for some insights. There's a lot of conversation in the industry that really the OCS should just provide this either for free or nominal.
Well, I mean, they collect it. Why not provide it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just this is nothing crazy. Like, this is not like Silicon Valley data insights. This is just like, hey, who's buying my product? And in any normal industry, that's pretty readily available. Like, you know who you're selling to, and who got your product. Customers are ordering more. You see those orders. But in this case, the OCS is a black box, and it's created this void. So in the beginning, it seems like
decades ago now, right?
Yeah. In the beginning of legalization, there were very strict rules about having no agreements for exchange of goods or services or money between retailers and producers. That's kind of covered under these anti-inducement regulations. And there's a twofold spirit of these rules. The number one most important to regulators, as I've sort of learned as I've gone down this rabbit hole, is protecting consumer choice. You're creating a brand new industry. You want to avoid having it monopolized by a couple of large players who've got hugely deep pockets, probably have connections to grocery or CPG or whatever else. Like, you don't want existing players to come in and steamroll everyone. You want diversity of choice. You want lots of new startups, lots of new entrants. And so to do this, you want to create a somewhat level playing field where nobody is creating like alliances that block people out of the distribution channel. So that's number one. Number two is, obviously we have a bit of a convoluted system where the OCS sits in the middle. You know, love it, hate it. We can debate that all day long. The fact is that's what it is. And everybody in the industry knew and understood that you must buy your product from the OCS. And we all knew and understood that we all get the same price. There's no bulk discounts. There's no volume discounts, none of that kind of thing. And that's part of why you had 1,900 people enter this industry. You know, this is sort of the initial promise made to everybody. You're all going to have an equal shot at this. It's an open market. They had other rules in place at the beginning to protect chains from coming in and steamrolling everybody. Initially, it was you couldn't have more than 10 stores, and then they upped that to whatever it was, 30, and then 50, and then
75, and now they're talking 150. Yeah. Like, where's the limit, right?
Yeah, they keep loosening that up. And maybe there's some logic that they didn't want it to happen at the beginning, and now as everyone's getting established, it's safer to opening it. I honestly think that one's a little inconsequential. I just find it's funny that somebody was able to get a rule change that benefited like one or two companies, maybe.
Do you think that was lobbying effort to open? I mean, it feels like it, because who else? Who's going to open 75 yet 150 stores other than some of your very large retail chains?
And there's a lot of problems in the industry that are completely ignored. So why is this the change that got me? That's the bigger question, right? And this is where this loops back around to data deals, talking about lobbying. About a year or two in, the AGCO changed the regulations around that no deal rule, like the no agreements and exchange of services or money between retailers and producers, and to insert an exception that says you are allowed to have a deal for the sale of data insights. And everyone that I know, like every retailer that we're talking to, and we're talking to hundreds of them, are looking at each other saying, who asked for this? Like there's a million problems in this industry. This was not one of them. So where did this come from? So once again, somebody's good at lobbying, and they don't represent the majority of the industry at all. So they add this exception allowing data agreements. And then this really opened up a can of worms, because there's another completely separate rule in the registrar standards, which is, by the way, registrar standards are this like rule book. It's not terribly complex. There's like 8 points. It's, you don't have to be a lawyer to read it. Every licensed retailer has to abide by it. It's got the window coverings. It's got the delivery rules. It's got everything, right? So there's a section in there called the anti-inducement section. And it says, no retailer shall accept any type of inducement from any producer or material inducement, it says. And it's funny, I've seen so many wonky interpretations of this. It doesn't mean something that's material like fabric. It means it has material in the materiality sense, like an accountant says it, meaning you can't accept something that's a large enough, significant enough amount to get you to change your behavior, to give you exclusivity, to push more of a product, to drop the price of a product. You can take educational samples, you can take swag, you can take anything where it's like small amounts and it's not really like, paying you to push a certain product more. It can't be a marketing agreement, can't be anything like that. And so that's a very strict rule, and that's very separate from the data deal rule. But, people seem to find a way, and people that came from BevElk, which half the corporate producers out there, all their reps are BevElk guys or CPG guys, and they want to use all the same tricks they've used in all these other industries. And they basically would come to verbal agreements saying, you're going to take our product and we're going to pay you, but then they just give them an invoice, and on the invoice, the line item says data. So, as long as we say it's data, they can't really question it. And this is where it got really weird, because you started to have large chains generating millions of dollars. Like,
we've seen some of the reports, like it's literally millions of dollars.
Yeah. And I'm not going to name names. I always say I'm only talking about the people who do this. So if you don't do this and you can come out and say that, then I'm not talking about you.
Right.
I'm talking about the ones that do it. And we've maintained there were lots. And sure enough, here's the first one, this recently come out. But basically, to varying degrees, is sometimes the producer is the one making the pitch. Sometimes the retailer is the one being aggressive and saying, if you want in on our shelves, you need to buy our data, quote unquote. And this again opened up sort of a can of worms. It became concerning for myself and others in the industry as we realized that it wasn't just people taking a little extra and putting it in their pocket or making their business work. What it was is predatory business models, predatory pricing business models, whereas we're going to go out and compete and win based on, there's the 4 Ps of marketing. We're just going to pull the price lever and we're going to annihilate everybody. And we're going to make that a sustainable, ongoing business model through this data revenue. So as it were, or so-called data revenue. And, it's kind of achieved this gross scale where you can go to third-party actual tech companies like Headset and Niobe, and you can get all the data in the world on the entire market for less than $50,000 a year. And then you had producers like Wagner's and Tricome, when they declared bankruptcy, in their statement of creditor protection, like the creditors they weren't paying part of the bankruptcy, included a number of large retail chains. In total, they owed over $800,000 to different retailers. And these are individual, the largest among them may have had, I think it was less than 60, 70 stores in Ontario at that point. Canadian, it was less. But how do you justify that when you can get all this data?
Where is that due? For what exchange?
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense. So they're making huge amounts of money subsidizing these prices. And there's a little story of Huntsville, Ontario. You've got 8 independent retail stores there. Everyone's sort of making a living. They're locals that love to do this. And 8 stores for a place like Huntsville is a lot.
That is a lot.
But they carved out their own little spots and their niche, did things differently, and they all made a living. And then along came a chain, opened up, had prices that were perpetually 20 to 25% lower than everybody else. And this is in an industry where margins are usually only 25, 30%, best case. And it just annihilated all those stores. All their sales got cut in half by 50%. Several of those stores closed. And this is the thing that people miss, because they're like, why are we picking on the chains? There's only 300-400 chains. There's 1,500 indies. But one store that comes to market with significantly lower prices, like there's a threshold. Once you're 20 to 25% cheaper, it's enough to matter, especially when in this day and age in the economy where it's at. Creates a bit of a vacuum, and one store can take out 10 to 20 indie stores or smaller stores that don't have that kind of aggressive pricing model, and people don't question it, which is funny because we've all been programmed. Oh yeah, chains have cheaper prices.
Yeah, it's the Walmart model.
But why? Why do chains have cheaper prices? They have cheaper prices because they have bulk buying. But bulk buying is physically illegal. It doesn't exist.
Technically in Ontario through the OCS. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. We should all have the same prices. That was the deal when we entered. And it's being circumvented, like plain and simple. And this isn't a loophole. The data deal thing isn't a loophole. It's fraudulent misrepresentation, taking an inducement payment. So if it's any sort of amount of money that is conditional upon taking the products or pushing the products, or you're being paid a certain amount per product, it's an inducement. I don't care what you say or how, it's pretty clear cut in terms of what it is. There's just lots of ways of hiding it so that you can't really find it. But hiding it as data doesn't mean it's allowed. It just means that you've misrepresented it as something else and you're being sneaky.
So, Owen,
go ahead.
Real quick question for you, Owen. I would like to know your interpretation on, this obviously happened to Can Express, who some would, call a fairly small retailer compared to some of those other big guys out there. What's your interpretation on why maybe it was Can Express in this instance, given that we think we know that this is going on at larger firms? Was it just, in your opinion, this was a more clear-cut, easy case for them to establish as kind of like a warning shot to the industry? Or, is there a reason you think they didn't go after maybe one of these bigger guys first? Or would just love to know your interpretation on that.
Sure. I'll background a little bit info there. So after we learned about all this data deal stuff and became alarmed about it, we created a campaign called Cancel Kickbacks. So we self-funded the website, the info video, the explainer video, all that sort of stuff, launched this through our PR firm, got lots of coverage, got the industry rallied around it. We gathered about 500 signatures, almost 200 stores signed on in support of this. Made a bunch of noise, got the attention of the AGCO. So about a year ago, they assigned a lead investigator, a gentleman named Troy Moffat, a really fantastic guy. He reminds me of Hank from Breaking Bad. He's like little tall guy. He's really friendly, but he gets you to talk. Anyways, Troy's an amazing guy. Anyways, he got on the case. We submitted the petition, like, so all the people who signed it to him, and we announced to everyone who signed that he was on the case, and this is progress. We've got someone looking into this. So from that point forward, it took on a life of its own. From what I heard, Troy reached out to a number of people who had signed the petition. A number of people reached out to Troy. Word got around because we published it online. And he started gathering info from everyone under the sun. And from everything I heard, he really hit the road and spent hours, popping into stores and talking to owners and talking to producers and this sort of thing. So we have no direct contact with Cannabis Express. They're not a competitor of ours. They don't operate in our market. So I don't know much about them. We had our eye on more of the bigger chains that seem to be hurting everyone at scale. All I can say is that I have heard through the grapevine from a number of producers that they are one that was very blatant about it. Like things like, you have to pay or you can't be in here. But I don't want to speculate. That's, again, I have no contact with them. I can only assume that they went after them because there was, if what those LPs told me was true, that there was a lot of evidence, and maybe was the easiest target to go after. But I spoke to Troy Moffat the day the news came out again, and asked what's next, and like, that's great, but that just as a signal to the market that something's being done, because it was just running rampant, and there was this impression that it's not being enforced and that the authorities don't care, and somebody, these chains must have it in with Big Brother, and they put a damper on it, and then it was just going to be allowed, which left us all scratching our heads like, why do we even have these rules? But the actual view that Troy shared with me is like, look, it's me and one other person that have been assigned to this.
Yeah.
And as you saw in the release, we had to go through over 80,000 individual documents. And, as soon as they take an action like this, the retailer can file an appeal. And so it's got to be airtight and buttoned up. And they have to do a thorough job. So I said, we're trying to do one at a time, do it really properly, make sure it is buttoned up instead of doing a bunch at once in a sloppy manner. So, and again, there is just two of them, which I can appreciate. So I said, this is great, but we haven't solved the industry problem, because you've got several hundred chain stores that seem to be operating more in this manner. What about those guys? And he said, don't worry, this is just the first of many. We're on to the next. But, there is just two of them. It's a big bureaucratic sort of organization. So slowly but surely. But I think the most important part of the announcement that something was being done here is a strong signal to the industry that, no, they're not turning a blind eye to this. There are consequences. And I think the other thing that a lot of the folks that engaged in this sort of thing sort of pulled one over on everybody with this really fuzzy logic of, oh, well, it happens in other industries, we should be able to do it here too. This is just the way things are.
It seems like a poor justification.
Well, and it sort of made the little guys feel hopeless. Like, it made us all be like, I guess, I'm just being naive, thinking rules will be, but that's not the case at all. They just hadn't gotten around to enforcing it yet. And I mean, those arguments are so funny when you think about them, because it's like everything about this industry is regulated. Like, since when
what
do we
we're
get
doing right now is regulated?
well, come on, let's start at the basics. Look at the plant. Like, this plant, we could all go plant in our backyards and sell at the market. Like, there's absolutely no barriers to actually producing this. It's all regulated and regulatory barriers. So it's so hypocritical to be like picking and choosing which of the regulations we think we have to abide by, especially at scale. Like, I'm sure there's a million little things where people bend rules and stuff, but at a scale of millions of dollars that's hurting hundreds of people. Like, we're talking 1,500 independent stores. Large chunk of them are people that remortgaged their house and went all in, and they're kind of counting on the rules being enforced in such a highly regulated space, and then to just get annihilated, because you can't run a retail store on 10-point margins. You just can't. And the chains don't have economies of scale. If anything, they've got better retail locations with higher rent. So, there aren't any efficiencies there. In fact, they've still got to pay for head office and executive salaries,
Right.
whereas the indies will be the owner operator in the shop. So if anything, the indies should be able to sustain lower prices than chains who have all this additional overhead of being a corporate monstrosity, right? But again, it's all turned upside down, and we've all just been programmed in a way that no one's questioning these things.
Do you think there's a chance that the Competition Bureau, do they have any grounds here to enter at some point?
So my understanding is the Competition Bureau, again, looks mostly at consumer choice and protecting consumer choice. So they are concerned more about the angle that we're seeing from the producer side. Are we blocking out good small producers? And this is why we, following this news, we've reached out, and I implore anybody out there in the industry, if you work for a small producer and you can't get into the market because you're being told, you need to pay for data, or, buy our data, or we're not taking your SKU, or maybe they're not being as subtle about it. But basically, if you're being blocked because you won't pay, then you need to contact Troy, because and you could contact the Competition Bureau, absolutely, because this is the behavior they really created those rules for more than anything else. I was hoping it was for the, enforce and make it equal playing field for the retailers, but they were actually doing it more on the production side. And an example of this is in Alberta, where I've talked to independent retailers and producers out there, and it's become a very difficult market to break into. They're a couple years ahead of us because they didn't have the lottery system. They just went wide open at the beginning. So the evolution started faster. But what happened is the chains took over and dominated.
Mm-hmm.
And the only things being sold at volume in the chains were the big guys who were paying. And then the AGLC started delisting anything that didn't have volume.
Right.
And then
the cycle.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. So if you were one of those small indies that was trying to have unique products that weren't in the chains, all of a sudden they started disappearing because none of them had enough volume because they didn't have the money to pay the chains.
Well, you're bringing up a very strong point where, when cancel kickbacks launched, there was a lot of chatter about it. Obviously, great publicity, lots of retailers signed on, but there was only a handful, maybe a few more of the producers that were truly paying attention. And what they're not realizing is the trickle effect here, right? Where if those indies are shutting down, they're unable to, because a lot of the times the indies are the ones carrying all the great products, especially, right? They go out of their way to ensure that they are carrying some of those smaller, to be defined craft producers, but, some quality flower from independent small producers. And if that's now driving them out of the market, it's not just the retailers needing to pay attention, it's the producers, especially those smaller ones that don't have millions and millions of overhead to be able to work with, or that capital to work with, to one, they shouldn't be, but pay to play. And I think that's it, right? So your call out where reach out to Troy, but this is going on not just in Ontario, correct? Like this is, like you just mentioned, Alberta, partly just pushed out of the way, some of the smaller indies, but as New Brunswick is shaping up, as Nova Scotia potentially could follow, this is an opportunity where things could potentially get out of hand there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where the indies also need to sort of flex and band together and share information. And more recently, a number of us high volume indie stores have started to get on the same page with each other and share information more broadly. And this all came from some insights I actually heard from an operator that had been in California for almost 20 years. And ironically, about the kickbacks thing, they said, just calm down. In California, this goes on, but what's happened is the industry has sorted itself out. The big corporate growers that produce crappy product have aligned with the big corporate chains that are kind of crappy experience. And the more legit good growers have aligned with the awesome, legit indie retailers. And you've sort of had this picking sides in the market. And this inspired this approach where we've basically said, what? The only reason some of these big guys, big producers have any kind of volume is because they're having their cake and eating it too.
Right.
And we need to shine a light on that so that indies can make better choices about what they want to carry and what they want to push. And basically the approach is we've gone to a number of the big producers and said, listen, don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining. Don't like you're coming here saying poor you, how can I support you, and then you're walking down the street and writing giant data checks to these large chains so they can undercut me. The best thing that the OCS has done, and there aren't a lot of OCS supporters, but I actually think their heart's in the right place, and they've proven it by what they've done with flow through. Because unlike the AGLC, where they've narrowed it and said, here's your selection, we're only carrying high volume, the OCS has widened it right up, and they've said, we're doing flow through, we're taking this up to 5,000 SKUs. And our store has one of the highest SKU counts in the province, but even we can't go to 5,000. So by going that big, it allows stores to carry truly different lineups of products, and it allows us to differentiate along those lines, which means the indies can carry one thing, the chains can carry something else. Like with only 1,000 SKUs, everyone's going to have all the same stuff. But by going broad, we can now align ourselves with the smaller guys that aren't doing the data deals with the chains, and that's where we've to build out this naughty and nice list of LPs.
Right. Well, that's a great way to reconcile. But, to the point of, well, the industry will sort itself out. To your other point about people have remortgaged their homes. They don't have the time to allow the industry to sort itself out, right? They need change. They need governance. They need investigations to happen, but also it's the awareness factor, right? And I think that there's a lot of individuals, for us and our audience, there is a very core, segment that are within the industry. They know what's going on, but we also have a vast audience outside the industry. They're consumers, but they don't know all this stuff that's going on. So that's our hope, is that they start to see this, because if it was Bev Elk, it's all over the news. You're going to see it on, whatever, CTV and CBC and all over the place, but it's cannabis. You're not going to necessarily see this. Hopefully we will. So that's what we're trying to do, right? Is make sure that the independent voices are heard, but the regulations are understood across the industry, and the challenges that individuals like yourself face.
Absolutely. And I didn't mean to say it'll sort itself out, like we shouldn't worry about it. It's more along the lines of, I think one thing we can all do. So if there's store owners watching, if there's LPs watching, in Ontario, you've got about 300 to 400 chain stores. You've got about 13 to 1,400 indies. Choose the indies. If you will come out and say, you know what, this is right, this stuff is wrong, we're hurting people, let's focus on the indie side of the segment, and we can broadcast that and let all the indies know, you'll get a lot more support from the indie side of thing. I mean, so there's sort of a two-pronged approach. It's like, yeah, we need enforcement against the chains that are doing this sort of thing. But on the other side, we have to show people a way forward. Like, how can you exist in this industry and do well? Because the common answer from the producer side is, it's business. We have so much production. We got to sell it. And, if we pay them, they'll bring it in and they'll push it. Well, pick the indie side is really our answer to that. Because what we've seen in every market, like if you look at the top 10 stores in Ontario, they're not chains. Mm-hmm. You look at the top stores in every market, they're not chains. The only good chain stores out there, to be honest, are usually the ones that were an indie that got acquired by a chain, and they're riding that zombie traffic that's had it going into it.
Over time, we'll see that potentially change, but yeah. Owen, great insight. We're going to pay very close attention to this as things move forward. Good on you as well for launching that campaign, and it's obviously it's had some effects. So we hear your dinger going off. So constantly must have traffic coming into your store. So that's good news, supporting indie, right? That's what we want to see. But we thank you for your time, and thanks for joining Legacies. We really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. I'd say to everybody, number one, pick indies if you can, both producer brands as well as stores. And number two, if you're in the industry and you know anything at all, the way I say it is somewhere on someone's hard drive is, the document that's going to shut this down for one of the chains. So just reach out to myself or Troy, and let's make the right thing happen. Because I'm kind of a sucker for this sort of hopeful, optimistic leadership approach. But it's like, if good people don't stand up and do something, then the other folks, the sketch bags, will be the ones leading everything, and we'll all just throw our hands up in despair. So stand up, do something, make it happen, do the right thing. Do the right thing.
But, do the right thing. Love it.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks, Owen. Appreciate your time,
Thanks,
man.
Owen.
Hey, what's up, everyone? You ever considered medical cannabis? You probably should. Chances are you have insurance benefits that will cover that. We at High Flyer Media have partnered with leading medical cannabis provider, Mendo Medical, to bring you an exclusive offer. If you sign up or register using code FLYWITHUS, you'll get 15% off your first order. But the advantage is far beyond that. The selection is one of the best we've ever seen, curated by Jay Schwartz himself. He ensures that every product going out the door meets his high-quality standards. Again, sign up or register with Mendo Medical using code FLYWITHUS. Well, there we go. We now understand the world of data deals a little bit better. Much love and support to all the efforts that these independent retailers are going through. Hopefully there's more change. Obviously, we want to be attacking the giants, but yeah, AGCO. Is that right? AGCO. I always get all these acronyms.
Yeah. I think
so screwed up. They're working tirelessly to try and figure this out. And it's an investigation, right? That's what it is. Let's talk about Houseplant for a second, if we could. Are you familiar with Houseplant?
Mr. Seth Rogen.
Mr.
Yes.
Seth Rogen. When we were starting the High Flyer, we loved Houseplants. It's something that, we can liken to, which is, good old Canadian boy, born in Vancouver, spent some time in the cannabis industry here, but Houseplant as a brand, which was started with him and I think his partner, Evan, I probably don't have that right. I'd have to double check. They started, Seth was into pottery and started playing around with pottery, and that led to more houseware type things and ashtrays and match holders and lanterns and all these cool things. And we loved, you remember this, going through the concept of building the High Flyer. We're like, we want to be retro. Man, look at what Houseplant did. We obviously didn't copy or mimic or build it based on that, but we could really feel that vibe from them that, they're dealing with millions. We're dealing with a very, very small fraction, and mostly sweat equity. But you certainly got us there. But the thing that kind of pisses me off the most when it comes to this is that, Canadian legend, really, especially in the cannabis scene, that, his wares aren't available in Canada. I don't know if you've gone through this. So I subscribed a long time ago. I get all the emails, shop Houseplant, and it's not available. And the thing is, if you go into any of their social accounts when they're posting about it, there's a ton of Canadians going, yeah, but you don't ship to Canada. Like I think it's starting to get to the point. I've had a couple conversations about this jokingly. And those individuals are saying, yeah, I don't think Seth gives a fuck about the Canadian cannabis industry anymore. Is that because of the exodus? I don't know. Cause he did have a cannabis brand. Pulled this out.
Yeah.
So despite being from Tweed and Canopy, this is an old one. This is nostalgic. Houseplant Sativa is what this was.
Where'd you get that from? How long have you had that?
I've had this. I knew it would come in handy sometime. There's actually, I think I put a Boveda or a boost pack in it, and there's some weed in here, but it's brown. I ain't fucking smoking that. Anyways, I've had this for a long time, and I thought that the product itself was really good, but it's not available anymore. So back in 2021, Seth and Canopy, they parted ways, but the announcement was such that he will return. And the announcement is such within Houseplant that he will return, or at least consider international shipping. And it's not available. In early days, you remember, I reached out to Houseplant. We were small, I get it, David and Goliath situation. And I'm like, listen, are you guys coming to Canada? We can help. We can help promote. Hell, we could put Houseplants on the High Flyer if we could figure out a way to do this. And the response I got was from a customer service representative.
Yeah.
We have no need for your services at this time. Thank you very much. That was literally all it was. And I was like,
yeah,
the fuck? Like, I wrote, I get it. I'm a wordy dude sometimes. It was like 3 paragraphs of, hey, neighbors from the north here. Let's show some love to Houseplant. Seth being a Canadian, I hope he still has his Canadian citizenship. Others will disagree. And I know people, if we break any of this out, people will go nuts. Say, fuck Seth, he left Canada. I love his movies. I loved the Houseplant brand. And I did enjoy the product. So let's maybe do this. Seth Rogen, it's time to come back to Canada. Your neighbors to the north, your home place of birth, we need you back. And we're looking for you, man. There's a lot of individuals that think you don't give a fuck about the Canadian cannabis industry anymore. I don't think that's true. You need to spend some time in Houseplant's comments to see that Canadians actually want Houseplant branded wares. It's time to come back. Reach out to us. We're happy to make this happen. And we'll even introduce you to a really good grower if you want to bring the cannabis brand back to Canada. Get us.
It's a good call out. There's definitely some accessories and stuff on houseplant.com that I would definitely love to have if I can get them in Canada.
Some of those ashtrays are unreal. Well, there's a lot of individuals that are saying, oh, it's so expensive. How do you expect? Listen, there's a range of prices in everything, in every industry. Is it cut out for everyone? This is the thing. So you could buy something really cool and have it as a centerpiece, right? Smoking with buddies. You got blunts out. You're doing this. You pull out a really cool tabletop ashtray. Here we go. See, there's Gordy's in studio. You would have caught that. And, but you have one, right? But these individuals sometimes will complain about the price of such, but they'll buy 5, 6, 10 of another where they could have just pooled that money and bought something. The one that got me was they've launched this robe, which is, I guess, reminiscent of another brand. And if I hadn't have just gotten a really wicked robe from Reigning Champ for Christmas, I'd probably buy that. I don't know if the quality's there, but regardless, we would love to see Houseplant available at least to Canadians that want to shop it. Because again, go through the comments. You can see there's a ton of individuals that want it. But 2 years have passed since saying that you will figure out a way to ship to Canada, and it still isn't happening. So not quite sure what's going on there.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. All right. So Gordy's anxious to get Lisa in. Let's take a short break. And when we get back, Lisa from Stok'd, and we're going to find out all the shit going on behind that wicked campaign that Angry Butterfly did for them.
Looking forward to it. Sounds good.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're joined by Lisa Bigioni of Stok'd Cannabis. Lisa, first of all, did I say your last name?
Nailed it.
Okay. Right on. This is the hardest part and the most anxiety I get, I think, when it comes to podcasting is, am I going to fuck someone's name up that bad? Or they're like,
I'll see, you've had a few Italians on here, and I think
they said, John, yeah.
There you go.
All right. Lisa, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. We know you're busy.
Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited.
Oh, we thank you. First of all, I have to ask, because we did connect, we've been trying to get you on for a while, and we're going to get into all the craziness of what's been going on around the Stok'd Cannabis, at least what you can tell us. But more importantly, how was Florida?
Florida was nice. You know what? It's nice to get somewhere hot. And, I like to travel to big places and fancy places, but sometimes it's nice to go somewhere that's familiar. So it was really nice.
Yeah. And you went with your parents, correct?
I went with my parents, and my brother and his wife were down there. So yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I bet. Well, it's good that you can get time away. That's number one. I think that, you've been doing things a long time, and knowing to strike that work-life balance is probably very important. Otherwise, you'd probably just kill everyone, especially in this industry.
That's true. Stok'd is lucky that we have Francesco Caruso on our team, and he's our director of retail. So he runs the stores while we're here and in our absence. So we're really lucky to have him on the team.
We've heard great things about Francesco. So that's good. We're going to go into a lot of details here, but let's first start as far back as we can. We know about June. We know that you were one of the first lottery winners. But let's go back further, because you've had a lifetime dedicated to cannabis in some way, shape, or form, other consumption or advocacy. When did that first start for you?
I mean, I smoked my first joint when I was about, I think it was 12 or 13.
Oh, okay. Early.
Rubber girl, right?
No doubt.
I was asked to, do you want the story?
That's why we're here. We want the story.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was asked to babysit. I was a babysitter, which I hated doing. And I asked if I could bring a friend, and they said yes. And we stole a piece of hash from her mom's stash box.
Okay.
Took it babysitting, put the kids to bed. These stranger kids. I know this isn't a good look for me, but remember, I was 12 or 13.
It's okay.
We put the kids to bed. We went outside. We rolled it into a joint. We smoked this joint, and it was our first time. So I'm not sure that we really felt it that much, but when we went back inside into their rec room, we were looking at their bookshelf, and we found the Kama Sutra. Now, if again, we just started flipping through. We're young, right? So we're like, holy moly, look at all of this. We're flipping through it and giggling our heads off. And we each pass out. I pass out on the couch and she passes out in the lazy boy chair. And the dad or the husband comes home first.
Okay.
And
No.
we're both passed out. I mean, anyone could have broken into the house and stolen the children. And he's trying to wake me up, but he's a nice guy. He doesn't want to come over and like touch me and shake me. So he's standing in the doorway to the family room, calling my name progressively louder and louder. This is what he told me afterwards. And I finally woke up. Oh my goodness. Woke my friend up. And as we're walking out of the room, I see the conversation like open on the coffee table. And I'm just mortified.
I bet.
Like,
Well, kudos, number one, for figuring out, listen, start rolling a joint, period, is difficult. I still find it difficult. I still roll the old school balloon joints. I mean, I joked with Wes the other day. I said, I don't spill any. I don't, I got used to rolling them on my lap while I was driving 20 years ago. You don't spill weed. But the fact that you were able to, at that age, figure out how to roll a hasher joint, kudos to that.
I don't know how good it was, but
yeah. It was probably just dropping out. I didn't know we had to crumble it first. We had to heat it and crumble it. What? So that's a funny, cool story. That's
my first cannabis experience. And, listen, that's many, many years ago, and I've been a smoker ever since. I've been, hardcore smoker, daily consumer through my 20s and 30s. Took a bit of a break. Was kind of a casual, a couple times a month. I would say I've never officially been an advocate. I've never marched, and advocated for change. I absolutely, love the people that have done that and that have brought us here today, but that wasn't me, unfortunately, or fortunately. But yeah, it's just kind of always been in my life. And then the lottery happened and actually taught me a lot about
Okay. So prior to that, though, you were sales and marketing. Which company were you with?
Yeah, I worked at IBM for 15 years, and then IBM sold our division to Lenovo. So like laptops, I sold and marketed laptops and desktops, essentially. Yeah.
Okay. So when you applied for your license then, or for the lottery, it's still so distant. It was just odd because you remember going through the process with Ontario. It was all government stores, and then Ford comes in. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to do a lottery, and then screw that. We're going to just open it up. But at what was that transition point? Were you still with IBM, or they shut that division down? You were out of work. I don't know. What was that gap period there?
I was actually at U of T at the time at the Rotman School of Management, the business school at U of T. And my brother was in the cannabis industry. He worked at Canopy Growth. And so we were, fascinated by all the goings on. And so every time we got together, and we'd always be asking him, okay, what's going on now? So we knew of the government changes from, government stores to open market, and then to the lottery. So Christmas time, we're all together over the holidays, and he tells us about the lottery. And so all of us, I have a lot of adult nieces and nephews as well. And we were all like, okay, well, let us
Italian.
know.
You should have a lot.
Exactly. So, we asked him to let us know when it happened, and he did. And a whole bunch of us applied. And, but it felt like, when you buy, or if you've ever bought one of those hospital $100 tickets, and you
Princess Margaret,
yeah, and it's kind of way off in the future, and I never checked the number. I just hope I get the email or the call. It was kind of something like that. I wasn't even 100% sure when the draw was happening.
Right. So friends, family, everyone obviously put your name in. You got to get your name in.
Right?
And at that time, how many licenses were they awarding? It was a small amount, wasn't it, at first?
25.
25. Wow. Okay.
And I think there were something like 17,000-ish applications, because you could apply for all regions within one application.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we just clicked off all of the regions and submitted it. And the Friday night came, that was the draw. And I wasn't aware that the draw was that night.
Yeah.
smoked a joint with my husband, sat down to watch a movie. And as soon as the movie started, my phone buzzed and I thought, oh, I'd have to turn this off. And I checked and it was the email from the AGCO letting me know that I'd been chosen. And I was hi. And so I was
Yeah.
like,
Well, what movie was it? I want to know what movie it was that
what's funny?
interrupted.
I actually don't remember what movie it was. It was like a Tyler Perry kind of movie. It was
Okay.
a comedy. It was something that we were gonna laugh to.
Yeah. Okay.
So my husband Brian is like grabbing his phone to see if he got a letter because he had applied as well. And then I text my brother, oh my goodness, Laura got selected. Now what? And he didn't answer. I'm phoning him and I text him.
Yeah.
And
What do I do with this?
what now? So the truth is, I was one of those people that didn't know about all of the rules around the lottery. I just applied. It took 5 minutes. And so a lot of people came down hard on those of us who were nobodies, who hadn't been advocates, who hadn't been following this all along. Because my brother was an executive in the industry and we share the same last name, and I had tweeted about him because I was in the executive programs group at Rotman and he was going to guest speak in one of our courses. And so I had tweeted about that. So people put 2 and 2 together on Twitter.
Oh, man.
Jody Emery was slagging me on Twitter. And this first weekend was absolutely insane because I didn't know what the heck I'd gotten myself into.
We had heard some of the stories, back then. So, backdating, that we've been in the industry a while, but so we were following along what was going on, all the changes. But we saw some crazy offers going out just to random, like they didn't even know who they were really reaching out to. It was just, you have a golden ticket and we want it. I'm sure there was some. I'm sure you must have been getting offers and your phone blowing up and emails. And what was that like?
It was a fascinating process because there were 25 of us, and then there were all of these retailers and consultants and lawyers and financiers trying to contact all of us. And we were all struggling with going through the process. There was a big challenge with getting the letter of credit that was needed for the AGCO by the first Friday. And so the fascinating part was it was like this giant game of telephone where when everyone was speaking with someone else, we were hearing, oh, did you hear that? BMO is apparently cannabis friendly. You can get a letter from them. Oh no, apparently they're not. CIBC is cannabis friendly. And then within 24 hours, the message through that telephone line was Alternative Savings is essentially the only one that's able to give the letter. But, I don't think a lot of us would have found out had all of these retailers typically from out west, were contacting us and contacting everybody and hearing about the challenges that we were all going through.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be difficult because I'm sure there were some lucrative offers. How do you make that decision? Like, no, I'm not going to take that. I'm going to be crazy and go do this on my own and actually go forward. What was that decision process for yourself and Brian?
It was intense. So the first offer, so I went to work. I got the letter on Friday. I went to work on Monday. I had told my boss that I had applied for this. In fact, I suggested that she apply as well. She didn't.
She didn't.
Well, she didn't. I went to work on Monday and I was in a meeting in her office when the first offer came through and I cried. And she's like, Lisa, I think you need to go home and I think you need to take the week off and you got to figure this out. So thank goodness for that. And so, you know what? The intensity of the week, it can hardly even be described because of all of the offers and the level of offers and you get an offer, the offer gets pulled. You find out what's supposed to be. I had never negotiated deals at this level personally in my life. Mm-hmm. And so, there was, and again, I had to find a lawyer in 5 minutes. I had to find an accountant in 5 minutes. I pulled in one of my brothers. I have 4 brothers, again, Italian.
That's it?
Yeah, exactly. I pulled in one of my brothers who is, very contract savvy because I wasn't at that time. In fact, I still have a bit of PTSD from looking at contracts. Brian has to do all of that as part of our relationship. And it was just making decisions really, really quickly. So I would speak to someone and they would, come up with an offer and I'd be like, I don't like that guy. It sounds really privileged, and it was.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got a gut, right? And I think that's the difference in business, especially, is we hear our gut, but we ignore it far too often. And those that are seeing the greatest success, they actually tune in and they go, well, hold on, maybe there's something here. So, but as you're going through those offers, I mean, I could just imagine you're giving me anxiety thinking about what you must have gone through in a week of you win a lottery, which would feel like a lottery. Winning anything is fun, right? And
Sure.
exhilarating. But so you go through that. There must have been were there offers that you were like, I'm going to contemplate this one. Definitely. Like, this makes sense.
All of essentially, like they just kept coming in, and then people, I would speak with other lottery winners and say, what are you being offered? And what does that feel like? And where are they talking about a store for you? Because we were trying to not put two stores on the same street.
Sure. Yeah.
Or even in the same city if we could avoid it.
Right.
Right.
But you won by a lot of those lottery winnings by region. Is that correct? So your region originally was Niagara?
Well, it was Ontario West.
Right. Ontario West.
Windsor, London.
Okay.
Hamilton, like that whole area. So, and there were 7 winners for that region. So we were trying to make sure that we weren't all going to end up in Hamilton, which was the hotspot that everyone would be in, or London.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were all these discussions. Without a word of a lie, I probably got an hour and a half to 2 hours of sleep a night that week. And we were like negotiating deals at 3 a.m. and faxing back. It was just crazy.
Jeez. So how do you make that decision, or what was that moment when you said, you know what? No, we're not going to take any of these offers, because the outlook was, it was grand, right? Like there's 25 licenses. Yeah, they'll probably release more. Everyone wants to buy weed legally. Let's do it. But what was that moment that you finally went, forget it, we're doing this, and then we're going to go into that path?
Actually, we did take an offer.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So the partnership with Quesion was was one of these offers. So the challenge was, and that was a big part of it too, is that Brian and I would spend the hours that we weren't on the phone saying, can we do this on our own? Because we're also having consultants, call us and email us, what have you. The reason we didn't, and we really, really wanted to, was that we had to have a signed lease by the second Friday. And so that was a challenge for us because it was Ontario West. We had to find an agent, and the agents that we spoke to said, everything's signed. Like they'd already taken everybody. When they thought it was going to be an open market here, all of the retailers had already signed everything. And so when we started to look in Niagara, Niagara Falls was one of our first choices. We started to look on our own. There was nothing really that was decent that we could get on our own because we didn't have backing. It was cannabis. Landlords were not interested in talking to us.
Yeah.
No VC money behind us, all of that sort of thing. So that was it's going to be really hard to find a spot. It turned out that the AGCO changed their mind at the 11th hour, that you didn't have to have the lease signed by the.
I was going to say, like, even the requirement of such, are they from Ontario? Like, I used to work commercial real estate ages and ages ago. The process alone can take 90 days, let alone having a secured signed lease.
Yeah. So I think that their intention was you should already be ready. You shouldn't have even applied for the lottery if you weren't ready.
It's so crazy. That's crazy. So you work with this. Walk us through what Quesion was in existence out west, was it not? So they were looking to move into Ontario, or they had some presence. So what was that?
Yeah. So they had already, I believe they had a number of leases. I don't know if they had a bunch signed, but they had a bunch ready to go. By the way, I was in the process of signing with another retailer, and they pulled the rug out from under me at the 11th hour. And, my anxiety went through the roof again. Like, okay, we have to do this on our own now.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, find us a lease. But, the phone kept ringing, and, we ended up still speaking with a whole bunch of others. And ultimately, we ended up choosing Chum, which at the time, and again, we were making decisions in like a very short period of time, big decisions.
Yeah, huge.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. What do you think of these guys? Like,
Yeah.
I liked their brand. I
Yeah.
liked their brand. I had one conversation with the CEO. I was like, he sounds like a good guy. Yeah, let's like, how bad can it be?
So they had a lease in place in Niagara then already.
It wasn't in place, but they had, it took them a little bit to find it, but they did find a great spot in there.
Right. Okay. So you join forces, you get because you're new into this retail space, especially in cannabis. What was that experience like for you? Was it straight to school, learning everything you can? Because obviously there was success there where you sell out your portion and move on and start Stok'd. But what was that like? It must have been somewhat overwhelming as well.
It was completely overwhelming. So my husband had been in the Domino's pizza franchise game for a while, so he understood that piece of the business. I had at IBM worked in operations for a retail chain that IBM had back in the day. So I kind of understood a little bit about that. And Chum essentially wanted to completely take over the process. So we had a little bit of, but it's my license and it's going to be my store, because the AGCO was very clear on it has to remain your store, but she had all the money. That was another decision factor, was that this was going to cost us a lot of money and banks weren't lending cannabis.
Yeah.
So, we ended up, they had a team, Chum had a team. So they set up the team, and this is what the store is going to be designed like. And we're going to help you hire all the staff. And we went through that process, but I didn't get official approval on my license until the end of April. So from January, whatever it was, the end of April. And it was incredibly stressful. We were worried that we were going to lose the opportunity, yet we had already invested a whole bunch of money. There was the $50,000 letter of credit that we had to put up. There were retainers for lawyers and accountants and all of that stuff. So we were already in for a whole bunch of money. Again, in hindsight, the AGCO, there's a lot of pros and cons about dealing with the AGCO, but they're not looking to screw anyone over.
Right.
We didn't know that though, because it seemed, and the woman that I was dealing with was very like black and white, cut and dry. Like, you have to do this. It turned out, I think, that there was a little leeway that we just didn't recognize. So it turned out to be more stressful than maybe it needed to be, but I was worried. We had to be interviewed by, Brian and I were interviewed by PwC.
Okay.
And we were interviewed separately, and he went first, and, he comes out of the interview and I'm like, oh my God, did you lose it? Like, are we?
It's like a Seinfeld adoption episode.
Yeah, seriously.
What'd you say?
He's like, I don't know. They told me, he had said he didn't have any, outstanding tickets, but they brought up a ticket that he had from a year and a half ago. And I was like, oh my God, we're going to lose it. They're going to disqualify us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's a crazy journey, but we're just getting started. So then you finally, product hit shelf, right? Because we know there's a ton, right? There's a ton in there, and I get it, there's a gap. Doors finally open, there's product on shelf. How long was that journey with Chum?
So we opened the store on June 15th of 2019.
2019, yep. One
of the best days of my life. So after all of that crazy stress, opening day was phenomenal. So incredibly exciting. I spoke to so many people who had come from far and wide, even though stores in Toronto and elsewhere had been open for a couple of months by then. But people from the US had come up to Niagara and told us their stories of, their ailments that they were looking for cannabis for. It was just an incredible day. And then Chum was technically able to purchase my license. Of course, that was part of the deal. They would put up all the money and ultimately buy the license when they could. They were able to do so in the middle of December of 2019. They waffled, and I kept kind of saying, okay, when are we doing this? Because I'm either keeping this store,
Right.
or we're ready to start our own. Like the whole plan was, we'll partner with Chew and we'll take that money and we'll start our own stores. So we got to get going on this. And so push came to shove, kind of March, April. They ended up buying the Chew store from me on, I think it was April 2nd of 2020.
Yeah.
And then
Pandemic time.
yeah. Honestly, it was the day before retail lockdown.
Man.
We were like,
Well, that's why you say when last time we met, it was start the car.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. It was literally the day
Oh,
before
man.
the announcement that retail had to lock down.
Wow. So had you already been laying track towards, you're looking at space, you're figuring out who suppliers, vendors, all these types of things are, and had you chosen a location already?
We hadn't. We looked at a few. The reason we hadn't, I'm a little bit cautious in that way. Brian had found a whole bunch, but I was really, really concerned that June was going to back out,
Okay.
and that we were still going to have this store in Niagara Falls, which would have been fine. Canada Cabana has it now. But there were a whole bunch of agreements with them where I would have had to pay back a bunch of this money. And so I was like, let's just, find the locations, but we can't really sign anything until we know the deal is done. So when the deal was closed at the beginning of April, we then went and found our first location, which is Pharmacy in St. Clair in Scarborough.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So at that point, we knew like Toronto, it started in March, where people started to submit their RSA applications, their location applications. We knew that Toronto was just going to be insane.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm a Scarborough girl, right?
I was
I'm
just going to ask that, like being a Scarborough girl, like born and raised, from what I understand,
raised.
Were you commuting? Like, you're not still in Scarborough, are you? Are you still in Scarborough?
So we don't live in Scarborough. We live kind of Danforth area.
Yeah.
But no, we rented a place in Niagara for 6 months.
That makes sense. Yeah. So sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off there. But being Scarborough, that obviously was the heart, right? That's where your heart is.
100%.
Toronto is screw that. There's enough competition there. You'd got to be crazy to do such a thing. So how did that go then?
Yeah, and you know what? There's 600,000 people plus in Scarborough. So we turned our sights on Scarborough, and our first location at Pharmacy in St. Clair is fantastic. We absolutely love it. We had a lot of challenges with finding locations in Scarborough because it's also a very ethnic community, and a lot of those ethnicities who own these plazas are anti-cannabis.
I was going to say they would be anti-cannabis for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big problem for us. So our second store, which is in Cliffside, and I wanted a store in Cliffside because I knew that there had been some unregulated stores prior to legalization in Cliffside. And so I thought there's this audience that needs a cannabis store.
Right.
So we really wanted one, and we wanted one on the south side of the street, which is, the drive home. Kingston Road is a throughway. It's Highway 2. It's really, really heavily trafficked. So we wanted a store on the south side. No one would rent to us.
Okay.
5 different plazas that are all lined up in a row. Not one of them would rent to us.
Man.
So we turned to the north side of the street, which is kind of shabby, and little individual landlords who own the building itself, not the whole plaza.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, we found this little spot. An old man owned the location. We bought the building from him because that was the only way for us to get in there. We got a really great price on it, but it needed to be completely redone.
Yeah, because you don't have enough going on, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's just buy a plaza too and redo all this.
Not a plaza, but
a building. Yeah, a building. That's still a lot to undertake. I mean, you have to resurface everything anyways, but.
Yeah, but it also has an apartment, and we had to, the guy who was living upstairs, we needed him to leave because it was an illegal apartment.
Oh, gosh.
It was a bit of a nightmare, but we ended up getting our spot, but then he wouldn't close on the day it was supposed to close. So, I could write a book. I'm sure
you should. Oh my God.
A lot of people did in the space.
So Scarborough right now is the flagship store, correct? Yeah. And then
what is flagship?
What is flagship? Yeah. And I think, we always think it's the biggest blowing out one there is, but in some cases, it's just where it started. Right.
I mean, I've only been to the Niagara location. So if Scarborough is considered your more flagship, then I need to see it because Niagara is
Well, like
beautiful.
Niagara is the biggest and most beautiful store that we have. It's big. It's gorgeous, right? It's super touristy. It's got a fire pit inside. They all have canoes hanging on the ceiling. They're all the Northern Ontario cottage camping vibe.
Yeah, I'm so jealous that Wes has gotten there already and I still haven't. We'll come see you in Scarborough. But
Awesome.
so you go through this, then you decide we don't have enough going on. You know, we're buying units and fixing them up and evicting tenants and opening stores here and there. Let's start franchising too.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well,
what was the
honestly,
decision?
That wasn't really, it wasn't our idea. I had a former colleague that I used to work with at IBM who was actually one of my customers. So he didn't work at IBM. I worked at one of our distributors. He contacted me and he was kind of following along, and he came to meet us at the first week at our first store and, you know, started asking all the questions about cannabis. And he's an investor in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
On top of his day job. And so, you know, he kind of toiled. And I said, listen, we're not franchising, but I can introduce you to people who are, and New Sessions was franchising and Spirit Leaf and what have you. And he said, no, you know, if I do this, I want to do this with Stok'd, and because I know you and what have you. So I said, okay, well, we're not doing this until you're ready, because we're not in the franchise game officially. So we will get into it if you want to. So it took him about a year to then kind of say, okay, I'm ready to do this.
Mm-hmm. So what was the appeal outside of you, which you're awesome, but was it the vibe? Was it the customer base? Was it the marketing? We'll talk about marketing too, but what was it that drew him to it specifically outside of you?
I think it was the design, like the whole Stok'd vibe, in that it's not an old school cannabis store. And again, nothing against that. Just we've chosen to really have a highly designed cannabis experience in our stores. So he liked that because he's not, you know, legacy guy. He just liked the fact that it wasn't a stoner kind of vibe.
Right. Okay. Very cool. So then you franchise, and then the franchise location was chosen for Scarborough as well. Is that correct?
It's in Scarborough. We looked all over. So we ended up with a spot in Scarborough. So we actually have 3 stores that are under 10 minutes apart from each other. And that was part of our original strategy, Brian and I, when we chose Scarborough, was to have 3 stores in South Scarborough so that we were, you know, for that brand recognition when people are driving around, and it makes it feel like we're a bigger chain than we are, but people are kind of seeing.
That. That's smart. That's smart. It's like when listing real estate, try and get as many signs on one block as possible to think you're dominating the market.
Yeah.
I love it.
That was our plan.
So
we had 2, and then we got diverted to Niagara Falls because someone reached out to us with a spot on Stanley Avenue and wanted a store and knew us from Choom. And so there was that diversion, but we always had wanted 3 in South Scarborough. So the franchise helped us do that.
So currently you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have Niagara and then the 3 Scarborough locations. Is there another one or one opening? Maybe I misread something.
We're working on another 1 or 2 locations, but nothing official.
Okay. Come to London. That gets closer to me.
Yeah.
I'm not franchising. I don't have the time for that.
Yeah.
I mean,
we'll do everything. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard that before too.
Well, I don't know. That might be a good idea because I'd love to do that podcast in that fire pit in the middle of the store.
We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out for sure. Once we get our exotic car bit figured out, we'll rip it down to Niagara Falls. Okay, so we go through all of this. You're franchising. You've got locations. You're cooking along. Now we talk marketing for a second. So you know this, and some of the audience knows this. I have a background in marketing and advertising. I've worked with a number of different companies. I actually built a media company doing very similar to what we're doing now, which is, I hate using this term, but bridging the gap, right? So connecting consumers or retailers with the brands, helping them understand what's out there. This is a good one because, you know, you're at the forefront of store design is excellent. You've got a great customer base. You know, you're getting noticed, and then you decide you're going to do a marketing campaign. I don't want to speak to that. I want you to fully speak to it because I wasn't sure if it was you engaged, because I know the way advertising agencies work. So you worked with Angry Butterfly. One of the CDs or creative directors on that, I actually went to school with, Brian. But how did that happen? What was that genesis moment of, we're going to do a marketing campaign?
We were connected through a mutual connection, and we had a conversation, me with Brent Choi, who's the CEO of Angry Butterfly. And, of course, as an my conversation with an ad agency is about how we struggle to advertise.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because of the way we have 3 stores in South Scarborough, we're kind of perfectly situated to do some sort of advertising if we could to a specific audience. So we had that kind of conversation, and he said, well, I have an idea.
So here, coincidentally, I know Brent as well.
Okay.
I could just imagine the wheel, because he's a creative through and through.
Oh my goodness.
Even though he does multiple things, but he's an executive creative director. I mean, that's what he spent a ton of time doing. So you pitch this to him as, we've got a problem. He immediately would go into problem solving mode, because that's what creatives do.
It wasn't even a pitch. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
it was
okay.
just a conversation.
A conversation about the restrictive nature. And that's the thing we're trying to determine ourselves are, why are more advertising agencies or true marketing companies not looking for solutions? I mean, outside of what we do at the High Flyer and creating platforms to be able to do so, you would think they'd all want to figure this out. So you have that conversation, and Brett recognizes it as an issue. And then did he just take it away, and then all of a sudden you get a call? What was that like?
I think that they had already been kind of stewing over some ideas. And so in that conversation, we discussed the idea that he had and that his team had of next to Stok'd, essentially.
Next to Stok'd,
advertising the neighboring businesses and or vendors that we use. We even had some customers that are in business that we thought we could engage. And honestly, I thought it was genius. I thought it was, and I still think it's within regulation, the way it was done and conceived. And we didn't have a lot of time. So it wasn't like, we ruminated this over months and months.
Yeah. The back and forth between creative. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We had this conversation probably late November, early December. And it ran at the end of January. So
right. That's quick.
Yeah, maybe it was early November, but it wasn't a long time frame. So we had to engage our neighbors. So I spoke to the bookstore, and my pitch to them was, we're not allowed to advertise cannabis, but we can advertise your business. There will likely be some cheeky references to my store and my products, but it won't actually talk about my store and my products, except it will say that you're located next to Stok'd.
Right. Which is brilliant. It's an absolute brilliant play.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I really do think it's brilliant. I still do. And so we approached the bookstore, said yes. The nail salon said yes. A flower shop declined. What kind of at the 11th hour, we were already engaged, and she was like, I don't think this is for me. Sub shop in Niagara Falls, the electrician in Niagara Falls. We wanted a window. We use a window washer. We have a guy who washes our windows on Kingston Road, and he declined. I think he was afraid of getting too much business out of it.
That's a good problem to have sometimes.
I know. So we ended up, signing up a few neighbors, and we went for it. And I hadn't gotten any legal advice initially, because I thought, we're not advertising Stok'd. We're not advertising cannabis.
But like all things, interpretation is, the difference between us and Health Canada. And the thing is this campaign ran. There's been reports it purposely flew under the radar. It did this, and it was like, well, hold on. No, this was a campaign that ran serving the purpose that it was created to do. Not necessarily, yes, okay, get by the regulations, but be in accordance with the regulations, I think, is better language, because you're succumb to those regulations and not allowed to do these things. So creatively it hits the bar. And then it runs, it runs under the radar, but we'll say through socials. It wasn't until what time that Health Canada was like, hold on here, because it got a lot of fanfare, right? And if I know anything about ad agencies, this was a campaign to win awards.
100%.
Straightforward,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
And it should. I still think that there'll be a Clio involved here at least, and if not more, 2 Clios, okay? I haven't gotten that far into the updates yet. So 2 Clios, possibly even a golden pencil, but we'll see what happens in that world. But at what point were things starting to roar up to the point where Health Canada's like, hey, we need to take notice of this, but also let's talk to Lisa?
Yeah. So it just kind of got out of control when it got onto social media. So first of all, the big win that I saw wasn't skirting the regulations, because I still believe that the ads are within regulation.
Compliant. Yep.
I saw the win as being able to put these ads out on social media and not have the accounts taken down.
Yeah. We were just talking about that this morning.
I saw your post.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, we've lost our Instagram account a number of times, and all of that. So I thought, okay, this is the win for us. That Meta and Instagram is Meta, but Meta and TikTok, they're not going to see that it's a Stok'd ad because it's not a Stok'd.
Right. So your battle wasn't against Health Canada and the regulations surrounding marketing. It was more so Meta, TikTok, etc., where, I mean, God forbid, you put anything with reference. I get it. Again, we touched on it. It's their sandbox. We brought our toys there. But at the same time, it's a little ridiculous. So your win was more about we can dominate in social, where otherwise we're always getting in trouble, where accounts are getting taken down, we're shadow banned. It wasn't against Health Canada's regulations.
Well, I didn't purposely go against Health Canada regulations. That was never the intention. The intention was to purposely try to get on social media.
Yep. So and it blows up. I mean, overnight success.
So it happened.
Yeah.
It ran. And then Angry Butterfly, because they're a fabulous group, they put together this promotional video that pulled all of the different ads into one and specifically said we skirted the regulation.
Ouch. Yeah. Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a problem, but I was pretty excited about the campaign, and I even shared that promotional because, again, it talks about being able to get through the social media filters, and honestly, it was a collaboration of all of the ads, so it was easier to kind of share that than individually share the different, right?
Yeah. So they put you on notice, basically.
Yeah, that's when so it got a ton of airplay on LinkedIn primarily. In fact, 100% on LinkedIn through the ad agency network and the Cannabis, so their network and my network. And so I know that typically Health Canada responds to complaints when they address these kinds of compliance issues. I'm not sure that anyone complained. Certainly someone might have.
I mean, it was out there, though. Anyone could have seen it too, right? So
anyone,
yeah.
And everyone did see it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Someone would have complained, but I also think that they may have just seen it.
Yeah, there's a very good chance. I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock not to have seen it. If you're on LinkedIn, I mean, it's, the what is it, the 7 degrees of separation and bacon or something like that. I always like that one, but you'd have to be under a rock not to have seen it.
Yeah, and certainly someone from the AGCO who might be connected to a bunch of stores and LPs may have seen it and then forwarded it. I don't know how they found out about it, but we got a 2 or 3 page letter from healthcare. Actually, what we heard first was that one of the participants, one of our neighbors, got a letter.
Oh, okay.
And then we got our letter, I think the same day or the next day. Ours was in a lot more detail. I think we're kind of front and center as the offending party. And it then talked about all of the compliance issues that were raised by this campaign, and in particular by the promotional video.
Right. Were there points within the letter that you're like, and don't go into details, but that you're like, oh, I could see that now, or what? No fucking way. Like, we weren't even close to that.
Yeah, no, it was mostly like, okay, I can see that. Yeah, I can see why you would have thought that. But I still contend, had there been no promotional video, no one would have thought that it was a Stok'd Cannabis ad.
Right.
Had we not told everyone it was.
Okay.
Right?
Interesting.
We told everyone this is a Stok'd Cannabis ad, but had we not, you wouldn't necessarily have thought so. And certainly young people wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you're still going through that. So you had to obviously go through the letters, submit a response. Health Canada tied up with a million things probably. You haven't heard back from them. So we're not going to go into that.
Angry Butterfly has heard back. So they got a letter.
Did. Okay. Interesting.
They were asked to remove the videos from social media, which they did. So did we. All of the neighbors who participated got a letter. They had to respond to say that, they've removed because the ads went out on their social media platforms.
Right.
So
right.
They were taken down. And so it's only Stok'd I believe it's only Stok'd that hasn't heard back. Also in our response, I kind of took responsibility for the partners who participated, the neighbors, because they certainly didn't read the Cannabis Act, weren't familiar.
Even when you do read it, I mean, there's still, like I say, there's interpretation, there's gray areas, it's not the easiest. And even without legal advice, or even with legal advice, I should say, it's still sometimes, because we know how the responses from lawyers come, which is still, I need someone to interpret what my lawyer said, right? So I can imagine it's challenging. But I think if anything, the success of what that campaign, I'm not just talking about the promotion, right? The success of shining a light on the difficult challenges faced, not only by retailers, but the brands or the companies and the individuals, because in a lot of cases, they can't make out the difference between, an independent or a large chain. And I think if anything, it's really just shining a light on, this is the industry, folks, right? And a large portion of our audience are not the advocates in the community of social and, keyboard warriors going off about this or that. They're consumers.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. They want to go into a store and buy cannabis. How they choose that store, it could be just driving around the neighborhood, right? It's certainly not the easiest thing to do based on billboard advertising, because there isn't any, right? So you get into, it has to be a location. It has to be through efforts of what, Stok'd and yourself have done. But if anything, I hope that there will be some more reform. And I know that's still, the recommendations have been put out there. We didn't see a lot in the world of marketing to be changed. Hopefully it will. I think that Health Canada has much larger fish to fry than worrying about some of these, promotions that may or may not be offside. And hopefully we'll see some change come from it. But I think all in all, successful. And we certainly hope that we don't see any penalties beyond anything that you could imagine come to Stok'd and yourself.
Thank you. I hope so too. But I will also say, what's on the other side? So next to Stok'd is Cliffside Village Books. Next to Cliffside Village Books is an illegal.
I was just going to ask about that too. So I am aware of that. How we've taken a stand at Legacies and High Flyer Media, which is basically, listen, we get it. Myself, I come from Legacy. I come from the Legacy market. Early MMAR, all the way through the regulations, work, on the regulated side now. But my stand is, if you are buying or consuming illicit market products, cannabis products, you're the problem. I'm sorry. You really are. Buying it from a friend getting it from a friend, they've grown at home, they've made their own cookies, whatever, that's different. But there are companies out there, brands that are promoting and pushing a ton of illicit product to market, and they can easily operate, I shouldn't say easily, but they can easily move to the regulated market if they want to operate. So they should be focusing their attention and efforts to shutting those down.
Well, this is it. And the issue that I have too is that it's just unfair. And, maybe I sound like a whiner, but the store that's 2 doors down from us has a giant, probably 6 foot by 4 foot sign that says $3 pre-rolls and $2 grams. They have 2 giant signs out in front of their store. I can't do that.
No, you can't do that. And here's the issue is the consumers don't know not all consumers, but a large populace do not understand the difference between the regulated and illicit or illegal stores operating.
Right. And I had a Facebook conversation in the community group with some people about exactly that. Because, I mentioned that the store was unregulated and unlicensed. And 2 people said, how do you know that?
Ask for their license. Ask for their Ontario license.
Well, and I kind of went through. Licensed stores have a sticker in their window with a seal from the Ontario government. Licensed stores can only be open from 9 to 11. These guys are open till midnight. I would love to be open till midnight.
24 hours if you could.
Exactly. Right. The packaging, the edibles, all of that stuff. There are ways to tell, but people don't know.
They don't know. And the illicit side of the market has become so crafty that they even use the same symbols on the packaging. In some cases, we've seen fake excise tax stamps that are getting put on to at least mimic, because, I don't pay attention to them. There's a stamp on it. Rip it open and away I go, right?
Right.
But and this is what we need to do. This is why we've created this platform as well, to draw that audience and say, there is a big difference. One, you'll know from price, right? We know that is one of the factors. That I got this pre-roll for $4.
Right.
Oh, okay. How? Right. The excise stamps, the as you say, the symbols on the stores going in, there is a license number. If you're online on a retail website, you have to, by law, put your license number in there as well. So there are a lot of ways. Obviously, we'll continue the grind and trying to educate and help, consumers discern the difference, but it's not easy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not.
We touched earlier, we had Owen on for a brief moment, and we talked about Owen Allerton from Highland Cannabis. Very, very vocal about dodgy data deals, right? We won't spend a lot of time on this. What are your quick thoughts on this?
My quick thoughts are that they are in place for the large players. They really only benefit the large players. There are organizations like the IRCC, which we are a part of, that I do truly believe are doing what they do for the benefit of independent retailers, but the benefit can never be at the level that large chains are seeing from the data deals that they're getting. So, we're not willing to compromise our menu and the products that we carry to make additional money on the back end on a data deal. So if the product is on the IRCC list, awesome. If there's a product on the list that we like that we don't currently carry, we'll check it out. But we're not going to make decisions of what to carry in our store based on who's paying.
Right.
And so, maybe we'll get enough money to cover rent for a month at one of our stores. Like it's never going to be.
It can't feel
$4 million
good.
A quarter.
Yeah, no. Well, and Owen touched on, there's certain CCAAs that have happened across retail, and some of the interesting line items in there are money due to retailers. Like, how the hell do you owe that much money to a retailer? Because typically it works in reverse. So what is that? We appreciate that. We think that, and we don't want to convolute this line of what the IRCC does, and other companies like Canna Collective, I think it is, West. Yeah. Legitimate. They have a proper system set up to be able to provide data, and they're sharing across the board. These other ones are just that. They are shitty, dodgy data deals that are not benefiting anyone other than those retail locations and those producers that are paying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Lisa,
so they're driving the price down. They're making things more competitive.
It's so difficult. So as much as, we try to remain neutral, but we are very much in, the backing of independent as much as possible. There are some larger chains that are legit and they do well. They treat their customers well. They treat the producers and the suppliers well. But there are other ones, and we know them. We won't name them. They'll come out that get your shit together. Quit screwing up this economy when it comes to cannabis. It's just, it's done. Anyways, Lisa, we've got some really cool things to do here. One, so we're going to do a giveaway. But before we get to that, what we've been doing is we've been trying this. So last week we had Gavin Delaney from Next Friday on, and we asked him to ask a question of the incoming guest that would be coming up the next week. He didn't know who it was. He didn't know if it was a brand. He didn't know of retail. He didn't know anything. He had asked a question that we're going to pose to you, and then we are going to ask you to pose a question to next week's guest. It can be literally anything. What color is your underwear, right? Something along those lines. It doesn't need to be anything specific. It can be fun, but we thought this would be a cool thing to try out.
Very cool.
All right.
Okay.
So when Wes has got it ready, we'll play it for you to see.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and play that clip.
Right now, in my opinion, is one of the toughest times in this industry, and it's something that I with so much negativity and so many hurdles to overcome on a day-to-day basis, it's pretty easy to seem. It's easy to look at things as very, very bleak. What keeps you as a brand, as a person, as a cultivator or extractor, whatever it is you do? What keeps you going? What makes you think that? What gives you faith that this is all going to be worth it, or that it's not what everybody else says it's going to be? Like, because there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of people that think that this is going to turn into alcohol industry where it's held by 3 different brands, which is totally possible. And I don't even disagree that that's going to be the case. But what keeps you going and motivated to continue to do better?
That was a really good question. And just off the top of my head, I would say what keeps me positive is the customers that come in the store and the conversations that we have with them, and how thrilled they are to be able to buy cannabis legally for whatever reason, recreationally or medically. There are certainly still some bleak points, but I know that there are a whole bunch of people and organizations out there that are fighting the fight to try to make change. And I understand government's going to take baby steps. That's the way it's always going to be. But I think as progression happens, we're going to see some change that's going to work well for the industry.
Okay, perfect.
That's a great answer. I think the one thing that we forget, you get to deal with customers. You get to deal with the bright side. I get it. Not all customers are created equal, but you get to see that positive side of the industry a lot, right? Where Wes and I spend hours and hours in meetings with brands every week. And there's a lot of bleakness, as Gavin would have put it, right? But I think I need to spend some time in retail. We need to do what was the dirty jobs? What was Mike
Rowe's dirty jobs?
Yeah, can I come to Stok'd and do a dirty jobs? Can you give me an apron?
100%.
Like,
please do. Let's set that up.
That would be so cool. All right, Tom,
Just,
you're doing stock. What?
We can't post the video on LinkedIn. That's that's the only thing.
Yeah, right. Right. All right. So Lisa, now it's your turn. You get to ask a question of the next guest.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go back to me telling my story of my first consumption experience, and I'm going to ask whoever it is to discuss their first consumption experience.
Okay. I have a feeling it's going to be a good one because I know who the guest is.
Okay, there you go.
But you get to watch for the answer and response. Lisa, this has been awesome. Before we go, we're going to do a Stok'd hoodie giveaway.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm excited. We just got some new merch. Our merch game is strong. We have a store in Niagara Falls that's super touristy. So we've doubled down on some really cool merch, and we just got some new hoodies in.
Oh, that's awesome. So we'll break this clip out. Like, follow, obviously Stok'd, you need to be there. Legacies, High Flyer if you'd like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our different channels that we have available, especially YouTube and Spotify. But in this case, we're giving an awesome Stok'd hoodie away. Lisa, thank you so much. And we'll do, what are we doing, Wes, normally? 48 hours?
Well, I think it's going to be important to note this because we just started this campaign this week I think this giveaway needs to be open to our Twitter followers.
Yes.
So this clip will go out on Instagram, but the follow, comment, kind of repost stuff all has to happen on Twitter for both the Legacies account as well as for the Stok'd account. Yeah, we'll just do the same thing as usual. Just like, repost, and maybe leave a comment.
Awesome. We'll do that draw. Lisa, thank you so much for joining. You're such a pleasure to have on. Always love talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
We appreciate you so much. And we're going to make this Dirty Jobs. We'll come up with a new name, but we're going to make that happen.
Awesome. I can't wait. We've had John Fowler from Muskoka come and work at us.
Know, he owes me a text. I sent him a text. We're actually going to do a tour to his farm up in Bracebridge.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah, we've known John for a while, so that'll be good. Thanks so much for joining Legacies, Lisa. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, sir, that was fun.
That was great. Very interesting hearing about that Angry Butterfly campaign. Really good.
Yeah, I'm happy that she was able to share some details. I know when we were first trying to connect, we wanted her right in the heat of it. And when she's like, no, we've got a Health Canada notice here. We need to go through and provide a response. We're like, okay, no problem. We'll give you space for it. But she's super cool.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely awesome. And just the giveaway that they're offering for this sweater. I have one of these sweaters. I was going to wear it. Unfortunately, it's in the wash. Super nice sweater. Beautiful sweater. You're going to be really excited.
Yeah, I'm so jealous. Maybe I'll get one. I'll buy one. I don't need to be gifted one. But when we go do this, figure this dirty jobs out, put me in an apron and serve customers. Is this good for sleep? It's all good for sleeping. Is this good for anxiety? It's all good for anxiety. Anyways, no, that was fun. So maybe just recap. No, number one, get on over to X, please. Elon, we need your support, buddy. Call all the cannabis brands in. But we're also doing a giveaway. Wes, take us away with that.
Yeah, so the giveaway will happen on Twitter. So we'll break this reel out on there. And if you just leave a like, repost, and make sure you're following both Legacies and Stok'd Cannabis on Twitter. I'll leave those handles right here at the bottom of the screen. And yeah, you'll be entered to win. And yeah, super exciting.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, another episode wrapping up. And looking forward to next week and posing that question because I know who it is. So it's going to be wild. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Don't forget to subscribe.